What's up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports. The MLB offseason is in full swing here. The hot stove is heating up, and we're talking about one of the biggest names, probably the biggest name on the pitching market, Jacob deGrom.
This one, like any major free agent, would be interesting. Um, what intrigues me here is that he looked hittable at the end of the season, whereas for a long stretch he was inhuman. So does that change things, or do you think he'll still get a huge deal?
I think he'll still get the deal that Jacob deGrom has deserved for a long time. He did look hittable towards the end of the year, but he also, once he came back from injury, and it was a lengthy injury spell, so you can kind of chalk it up to that. But there were stretches there where he still showed that kind of unhuman type, nasty stuff, nasty velocity, all around just nastiness that we've become familiar with seeing from Jacob deGrom and what Jacob deGrom shows night in and night out. Um, I don't think it's really a concern. I think that he's definitely worth whatever teams are going to throw at him. Definitely, I think north of $40 million a year is probably where I would put him. When you consider what Max Scherzer got, I think Jacob deGrom is all around better than Max Scherzer. He's younger than when Max Scherzer signed that deal. Um, I think you have the opportunity to get more term out of that too. So the overall value of that contract is going to be a lot larger, I think. And I think it's a unique year that there's probably a lot of teams in play for him right now, as when he hinted that he didn't know what his offseason plans were after getting knocked out by the Padres in the wild card series. I immediately thought to myself, all 29 other teams are probably on the phone with his agent right now. And all 29 other teams would be stupid not to. Obviously, you look at teams like the Oakland Athletics, and they're not going to be a play for him, or the Pittsburgh Pirates. But all 29 teams would have some sort of interest in Jacob deGrom and would find that very intriguing that he doesn't know where he's going. So if we break down the suitors here that I think would be the top suitors for Jacob deGrom, there's obviously some other teams that could be added to that list, like the Boston Red Sox, like the Atlanta Braves. I've heard the St. Louis Cardinals thrown around, the New York Yankees, obviously. But I think the three best suitors for him are obviously the New York Mets, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Texas Rangers. Now, with the New York Mets, he's come out and said that if he has similar offers, he'd be more inclined to stick with the Mets. So that's obviously, you could consider that as a play in the Mets' favor. You could also consider that as just a bargaining chip to try to up other offers to try to outbid the Mets, which again, we mentioned it in the Verlander video, and why the Mets could be in play for Verlander. Steve Cohen has bottomless pockets, it seems, and he's willing to do what it takes and spend the money that it takes to bring a World Series to Queens and bring a World Series back to the Mets. Obviously, the Dodgers, if we talk about bottomless pockets here, the Dodgers are probably the kings of going out and signing big name free agents and trying to buy their way to a World Series. The Dodgers are obviously intriguing. A lot of great talent already in that rotation with Julio Urias, Walker Buehler when he gets back from injury. Guys like Dustin May are very intriguing prospects. I guess Dustin May's not a prospect, but still very young and raw in his talent, but very intriguing names coming up through the system there. So obviously the Dodgers would be in play. But the Texas Rangers, I think, are an intriguing option too. We've seen what they've done in the past. Last off season in particular, signing Corey Seager, signing Marcus Semien to big deals when, it didn't seem all that likely that Texas was going to be a big player in the off season. But they've shown that they want to be big players, that that last off season was only scratching the surface of what they wanted to do. So I think they are a big player here to improve a rotation that has decent pieces with John Gray. Martin Perez obviously picking up that qualifying offer this offseason after an all-star caliber year last year. I think the Texas Rangers are a unique option, and that's actually where I think Jacob deGrom is going to land on a 4-year deal worth $160 million. So $40 million a year there. I think it would be the same AAV that we gave Justin Verlander in an earlier video. Make sure to check that out too. We break that down. So the same average annual value there to his contract, but spread out over 4 years. I think if you were to get a Verlander type deal, which I don't see him signing for any less than 4 years, obviously that price would skyrocket there. It would probably well exceed the 43.3 million average annual value record that Max Scherzer set last offseason with the Mets. But I think Texas is really willing to stay competitive and do what it takes to stay competitive in a very competitive AL West. Obviously, the Astros are the reigning champions there. The Seattle Mariners finally broke their playoff drought, and they have a young, promising squad. You can never count out the Angels, although they disappoint year in and year out. When you have Shohei Ohtani and you have Mike Trout, and seeing the moves that they've already made this offseason with Tyler Anderson and bringing in Hunter Renfroe for the outfield, they're looking to posture themselves in a way that they can stay competitive in a wild card race that now features three wild card teams outside of the division winners. So in an expanded playoffs, I think Texas is trying to position themselves, if they don't compete next year, within that 4-year span, that they will be competing for that division. So I think Jacob deGrom sets them up to do that. They've already shown their willingness to spend with huge contracts with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. And I think the important thing to note when you're comparing these three suitors here, I think, especially in the MLB, tax laws come into play when it comes to this, when it comes to states. And Texas, their state taxes are just non-existent, really, whereas you have high state taxes in California and New York. So I think when you talk about guys wanting money, if you can offer a guy $40 million a year and not all of, and he actually sees a lot of that. We've seen it in the past when Zach Greinke signed in 2016 with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Well, why did he do that? Why did he do that? Well, Arizona's tax laws are a lot more lax than in New York or California. So it seems like I don't know, it seems like an uninteresting kind of take on Texas, but it is the truth. Texas guys see a lot more of their contract. And I think that's what lures some people in to these teams that aren't small markets, but aren't traditionally big markets as well. Not your New Yorks, not your Bostons, not your LAs. So I think he ends up in Texas. I think he anchors that rotation that next year would be pretty promising with the top three of deGrom, Martin Perez, and John Gray. Obviously, I think they'd look to add some more names there. And in the future, bringing up guys like Jack Leiter, I think would be big as well. They've got some other names coming through their pipeline as well. So they could form within the next 4 years of this contract a very interesting rotation if they are to sign Jacob deGrom. And I think he will bounce back from, he didn't have a bad year this year by any means coming back from injury, but not the inhuman year that we normally expect from Jacob deGrom. So yeah, Texas Rangers 4 years, 160. That's what I would predict. I could also see this going higher than $40 million too. I think $40 million might be the lowest. If it gets into a bidding war, like I think it will. And I think you'll see that for a lot of the big name free agents, bidding wars driving up the prices.
Well, there's definitely no pitcher like Jacob deGrom, so it'll be interesting to see who picks him up at age 34 and for how long he signs. But we'll be here to report on it and the rest of free agency, so see you soon.